Hey guys, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Nuns. Today we're studying Jeremiah chapters 43 and 44. Let's get started.
Okay, so I want to say, first of all, congratulations to John. This was like take number 3, because he kept saying this is Jeremiah 34. So he's stuck on last week. So everybody give it up for John. We're very proud of you. Good job. All right, let's get to it. So we decided that Jeremiah has had what kind of life, John?
A rough one.
He's had a rough life. So in order to understand what's happening in 43 and 44, you got to remember the story has now changed a little bit in Jeremiah from his prophecies to now it's the narrative of his life. So earlier, yesterday, we talked about the fall of Jerusalem. We talked about the Babylonians came in, they attacked, they took over. When they left to go back home, they set up this governor who was going to lead Jerusalem and oversee all the leftovers that were there. And the reason why they left people there is because if you are the king of Babylon and you take over a land, you don't want to live there because you still got it pretty good back at home. But you have to justify why you went there in the first place. So you had to leave some people for the purpose of farming and raising crops so that they could raise the crops and then send it to Babylon because you wanted a return on your investment. So he left the guy there and he was supposed to be the governor. The governor is then assassinated, and then everybody is captured, and then they're rescued. But then the people who rescued them are like also a little bit crazy. And so they decide, we're so afraid that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come back and get mad at us because the governor died. We got to run away. And they decide they're going to run away to Egypt. Now, I don't know if you remember much about the history of Israel, but nothing good ever happened to them in Egypt. And so they decide. So they ask Jeremiah, hey, Jeremiah, go talk to God and ask God if we should go there. Jeremiah goes, he prays, and he says, God says, do not leave here. Do not go away. Stay where you're at, and I'll take care of you. These people are so crazy. They look at Jeremiah and they go, well, that's not what we wanted to hear, so you are a liar, sir. So Jeremiah's been preaching for 40 years, and name me one time, I dare you, name me one time he was ever wrong.
I don't want to.
Okay, because we can't. So after 40 years of preaching, he's never been wrong. But who was wrong in all those years?
All of them.
All the false prophets. They were all wrong. Jeremiah was the only guy standing there like, yeah, this is what God said. And now when they don't like what he has to say, they call him a liar. So they go to Egypt. Jeremiah is in Egypt and God gives him a sign message. He said, hey, go pick up 2 rocks. He said, and then go dig a hole. Put the rocks in the hole and then preach this message to them. Say, you are spending all of your time running away from Nebuchadnezzar. What you do not know is exactly where I buried these rocks. Nebuchadnezzar is going to come here. He's going to set up his throne right directly over these rocks. You're running from something that's going to catch up with you. So the people are mad. I mean, shocker, right? Mm-hmm. Then in chapter 44, there was a group of people, mostly led by some ladies, and they decide that they live the best lives when they were worshiping the goddess Asherah, the queen of heaven is what they called her. And as evidence for the fact that it's okay to worship her, they say, well, when we worshiped her, we were prosperous. Okay, so their prosperity, their happiness was their God, right? They also said, well, back in Jerusalem, the princes worshipped him, the judges, the kings, the leaders, and our own husbands. And the husbands are in the background going like, yeah, we did. So the husbands are extremely passive in all of this. But the ladies are like, we're going back to worshiping her because things were better when we're worshiping. And they oddly sound like the Israelites did when they had come out of Egypt. Like every time they had trouble in the wilderness, what did they always threaten?
They're like,
I want to go back to Egypt. That's right. So they're like, we want to go back to our old gods because that was the good old days. And Jeremiah's like, you people have been in Egypt for 5 minutes and you're already worshiping false gods. He said, haven't you realized every time you start worshiping false gods, bad things happen? He says, and by the way, those kings and those leaders and your husbands and all those guys who didn't mind y'all worshiping this false god, where are you at now? Your country is gone, everything's torn down, you've lost everything, and you're runaways living in Egypt trying to hide. Did that work out good for you? So he goes, so what are you going to do? I mean, the irony of this story is you just keep looking at these people going, okay, When are you going to stop it? All right, John, before we get in, what you got?
All right, so my takeaway comes from this part, and it was actually, so I wanted to talk about how being a Christian, it's not easy. So if you're not doing what God asks you, and you're trying to do your own stuff, and you're doing completely the wrong, and you're sinning everywhere, it might seem like a pretty good, carefree life. And the thing is, it might be, but being a Christian, it's not gonna be easy it's not gonna be easy. But you could rather have a good, decent, like struggle-free life, but then spend eternity in hell and struggle the entire time there. Or you could spend eternity with God, our Father, and basically be at peace for the rest of ever.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you gotta listen to who?
God.
That's right. That's right. So my big takeaway comes from the end of chapter 44, basically where in verse number 10 it says this. It tells their problem. It says they have not been humbled yet. So Tony Evans wrote about this. He says their problem is they are giving themselves self-inflicted wounds. They had forgotten their evils. And they had forgotten the evils of their ancestors and their kings, and they had learned nothing from them. They had not become humble, and when God was coming after them, he was going to have to deal with their pride before he dealt with their situation, because their pride was the opposition. So here's the thing. What's it going to take for you and I to look at the false gods in our lives, the things that crave our attention and our affection, our love and our devotion and our time? What's it going to take for us to be so tired of those things we go, no, we're actually done with those forever and we're only going to focus on the one true God? How bad does it have to get before we're ready to acknowledge that the other path is a path that leads to destruction, but the narrow path is the one that leads to life? So John is exactly right. The key to all of this is you have to listen to what God's saying and obey. But in order to do that, you got to be humble, because nobody's going to listen if they think that what they're saying is always right. All right, we got to be humble about this. So we'll see you tomorrow as we look at chapters 45 and 46. See you then.
Bye.